Hey guys, welcome back.
Hey, it's Whitney.
And Sarah, we're today going to talk about something a little personal to me, the NICU experience. Whitney has not had personal experience with NICU, thankfully.
Yes, but I did work in labor and delivery, and so I had several patients whose babies did go to NICU, and I have had some friends where their babies went to NICU as well. My oldest almost went to NICU because her temp dropped, but obviously that was not a severe or significant type of even observation if she had gone to the NICU.
Right. So the NICU, if it's kind of a unknown word to people, so I kind of say it's like the ICU, the intensive care for babies.
Yes, that's perfect.
And it can be super intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
No matter, like I'm a nurse, I had done NICU rotations through.
Mm-hmm.
It's something about these. First off, it's your baby, so you never want anything wrong with this child, even if you know it's expected that the baby is going to be in NICU or not. It's still extremely hard. With Will, our oldest, I had Previa, which again we've kind of talked about in the past. It's a placenta complication, so we knew he was going to be early. They were not going to let him go to 40 weeks no matter what.
Got it.
So he was born at 34 weeks.
Okay.
And he was in the NICU for 10 days.
Okay.
Which was actually really
good. Say, that's not as long as I would have anticipated.
No. So that was a blessing. But I remember waking up from anesthesia because I had an emergency C-section, and Bill showing me a picture of Will, and he had all these little lines and his little blood pressure, and then he looked so tight, which he was. He was 5 pounds, which he would have been huge if he would have grown.
Made it,
so maybe that's like an underlining thing there. But and they rolled me over to NICU, and it was the lights, it was the sounds, it was the beeping. It was my little baby that I was supposed to be holding in that moment.
And you couldn't.
And I couldn't.
Of all the lines.
And I remember Bill, they asked him if he wanted to help or touch Will before I was allowed to come there. And he was like, I felt so scared to touch him. And then I went up to the room and they wheeled me back down, and I had said, can I please hold him? And they said, his breathing's really fast right now. It's to be expected. He was on oxygen. He was never intubated.
Okay.
So he was actually pretty healthy for a 34-weeker. But just that pain and sorrow in that moment, I felt of like, this is not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to, I knew he'd be in NICU.
But you didn't expect that severity?
No, I didn't. And I just wanted, I've been waiting to see this sweet little boy. And I wanted to hold him. And I was very thankful that we survived because it was very scary. And the odds of us not making it during the birth was high.
Yeah.
I remember everybody's like, oh, but you both survived. It's fine. It's fine. And I'm like, it's not fine. It's not fine.
Yeah.
So with the NICU too, with my experience, which we were at UAB, it was world class.
Yeah.
And the nurses and staff were phenomenal. And the nurses, really, I leaned on them because even though I'm a nurse, I'm not a baby nurse. And I think a lot of parents, even though how much we feel educated, you kind of get clueless in a sense when it's your baby. And they were so gracious and kind to me. But I just remember I walked, I finally they said, if you can walk, you can go back down. Because, I was still in my hospital room recovering from my C-section. And here's Will several floors down. And they're like, if you can walk to the wheelchair, you can go back down.
Okay.
So I was like, I'm getting up and I'm walking. Yeah. I go back down and being wheeled through the NICU. And different NICUs are, set up differently. Sometimes it's like big rows of babies.
Yeah.
UAB had individual rooms.
Yeah, St. Vincent's had pods set up.
Yeah. So it was, I remember though going through and seeing the, 20-something weekers.
Yeah.
There was a lot of sick babies and the alarms going off. And seeing the nurses rush in.
Yeah.
And just seeing the looks of other parents' faces.
Yeah.
And I felt grateful that we had survived, but I was also really sad that we were there.
Yeah.
And
that's not a club you want to belong to.
No one wants to go there. And I felt helpless.
Yeah.
I felt like I couldn't do anything to make him better.
Yeah.
Part of me had, not that my body fell, but I kind of felt like I should have kept him safer.
That if you had been pregnant maybe for a week or two longer, it wouldn't be as
Right.
bad.
I had this like, I don't know what. I think I didn't, they don't do like tours of the NICU if or
Yeah,
anything
no,
like that for you to kind of
no.
mentally prepare. So it's like this,
Especially post-COVID.
right. So it's this whole weird just atmosphere of
Yeah.
feeling really helpless as a mom.
Yeah.
And I know I count myself very lucky
Yeah.
that it was 10 days.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. They're like, expect him to be in longer because he's a wimpy white boy.
Yes.
And I said, what? And it was just talking about,
Yeah.
in general,
Mhm.
white boys are the last to get out of NICU.
Yep.
They tend to be a little lazy, they said.
Yeah, I can remember from working at St. Vincent's again. I wasn't in the NICU, but I would, sometimes go over there and see patients and things like that. And it was so funny. They would say kind of the hierarchy when it comes to babies is that little black girls tend to do very well.
Right.
Then it's white girls.
Yeah.
And then little black boys. And then it's wimpy white boy syndrome.
Yeah.
Every single time.
Yeah. It was, that was a new concept. I had to prepare for that.
Yeah.
And I just don't, I remember sitting there and this sounds so superficial when I say this, but I was like mourning the loss of like the cute baby introduction picture. And I was like, and I felt a little bit embarrassed that like he had oxygen and an NG tube and he had, and I felt like, Sarah, why are you even thinking this way? But and he was so tiny.
Yeah.
But then so I was feeling this one way of loss of control, loss of like an experience.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Of not what I pictured. Plus, then everybody's like, you should be so thankful.
I didn't say I wasn't thankful, Aunt Brenda.
Exactly.
I'm still grieving and recovering and dealing with trauma. So
yeah. And then we had an interesting experience with like the lactation consultant in the NICU. Dear. And I know some are fantastic.
Yeah.
But it was very much, you need to produce milk and you need to get this going. And if you've had an early baby, traumatic birth, high stress for babies in the NICU, that all impacts your milk supply.
For sure.
But I felt so much pressure that he needed the breast milk that I remember sitting in the NICU just pumping continuously. Yeah. I tried anything. I tried oatmeal bars. I tried blue Gatorade. And if I had just like a tiny ounce, it was like
a big deal.
A big deal. And on that note, I've had friends that have experienced similar things and that pressure and shaming and guilt that gets placed on that mom in that moment.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
No.
So this is me saying, if your baby's in the NICU and you're struggling yourself and the milk's not coming in,
you're not alone.
You're not alone. And there's other options.
And you're not a bad mom.
You're absolutely not a bad mom.
You're not a failure.
No. And your body didn't fail.
Nope.
And I remember one day, it was a maybe day like 4 or 5, we had went to outside of the hospital. It was like this little restaurant. And they encouraged me to take breaks. And I needed breaks because I would just camp up in the NICU. And I don't think that's healthy for anybody.
Agreed.
Because you get sensory overload there.
Oh, yeah.
The noises, the lights, the sounds.
The beeps, the smells.
The fear of like almost anxiety of like coming in. Because you kind of are just like, what is today holding? Yeah. And I remember if he would be progressing, then he would take a little dip. It just felt like we'd never get out. And again, loss of control. Here I couldn't do anything. But we had took a little break, and I look still very pregnant because you do.
Oh, for sure.
You still look very pregnant.
Takes a while for it to all go down.
And I was sitting there, and I remember the waitress, she goes, "When are you due?" And I said, "Oh, I just had my baby." And she goes, "Well, where is he?" And I just started bawling because I was like, he's in the NICU. Yeah. And she's just like, oh boy, I've opened a can of worms. I shouldn't have ever said anything. Yeah. But it made me just think about, in that moment, I couldn't explain, well, we had just survived this thing. Yeah. Clearly I didn't choose my baby to be in the NICU.
Exactly. Yeah.
I didn't know, we thought he was going to be really good and okay, but what if he wasn't? Or what's if I had lost him?
Yeah.
So
Which
that
felt like a very real possibility.
yeah. So it was extremely. I'll never forget that moment with that waitress.
Yeah.
As like really defining.
Yes, I'm sure.
A big moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, you should never ask a woman if she's pregnant.
No.
Okay.
No,
That's happened to me.
Ever.
You know, recently when I am not pregnant.
What?
Apparently, you eat a little too much, a little bloated in the wrong outfit.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly not, you don't know where that baby is or what that mom's experienced.
Exactly.
But the NICU experience, I just wanted to touch on that the loss that I felt of my experience and just seeing your baby and not being able to do is so hard.
It is hard.
How do you suggest moms who are in the NICU, not knowing what today or tomorrow brings, how do they cope?
So this is one of those times I would very, very much strongly encourage voice journaling.
Okay.
Because do you need therapy? Yes. But at the same time, you're in crisis mode.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what each day holds.
Yeah.
You may not feel like you can block an hour out to do a therapy session.
Right.
So voice journaling is going to be your next best option.
Mm-hmm.
Know who your support is.
Yeah. And not, I found some people I thought would be my support weren't necessarily the best to support me in that stage.
Yeah. So figure out your support. If that means that someone else helps with your older child while you're in the NICU with your baby, that's appropriate.
Yeah.
So when I say support, I don't necessarily mean just who you can talk to about it. That is a component. But who can help you in that time? It doesn't mean somebody picks up your mail.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean someone just goes and cleans your house for you or cuts your grass or brings you a mail or Venmos you some money so you can go get something at the hospital cafeteria.
Yeah.
Things like that. You're allowed to ask for help and you're allowed to receive help. Voice journal so you can actually process and decompress from what is going on.
Mm-hmm.
As best you can, write down your questions either in the notes section on your phone or like pen and paper for whenever the doctors do round in NICU.
Yeah.
Because when they round, you're going to be sleep deprived. I'm not going to say probably. You are going to be sleep deprived. And it's almost like white coat syndrome in a sense. Like when they come in, you're like, oh, what was I going to ask again?
Well, and I felt too, which this is an academic university, there was like a team of them. I think they were like, I swear it felt like the whole small room was filled with them.
I'm sure.
And that feels intimidating.
Oh, absolutely.
Even me, who is a nurse, and I tend to be pretty outspoken in general, I felt like, oh, is this a dumb question?
Yeah.
Or, and there's, especially in different hospitals, there's sometimes different levels of doctors.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
From interns to residents to fellows attendings.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of educating yourself. Yep. There's probably going to be respiratory therapy.
Oh, yeah.
Feeding, speech, PT, OT. And you have every right, if someone comes into your room, a baby's room, to ask who they are.
Yep.
What they're doing.
See their badge.
That's something that's...
And their badge should be visible.
Right. It should be in, wash their hands if they need to be wearing a mask, etc. You have every right. And like we kept a journal, kind of notes.
Yeah.
Because it gets overwhelming.
It does.
It truly gets overwhelming. And I remember one day, we had missed rounding because they had done it early. Sometimes they round at like 5 a.m.
Yeah, it's a little crazy.
And you're just like, I can't function with this.
No.
And I asked, it was shift change. And knowing shift change is, that's probably not the best time to try to get information because the nurses are trying to, educate themselves about the patients, but kind of getting settled in. Mm-hmm. And I had thought in my head that we were going to do X today with Will.
Yeah.
And it did not happen.
Oh.
And I just kind of lost it. So I think setting expectations that sometimes you don't know what the day holds.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing...
that it's kind of minute by minute.
It is. And taking those breaks.
Yeah, it's okay.
And then how the NICU experience was between me and Bill was still having to go to work.
Yeah.
So he would have to go to work. So I felt like I was there. And my parents were lucky enough that they were able to take some time off with us and was there with me. But I know... several other moms in the NICU did not have that option.
Yeah.
Or that you had to take turns.
Yeah.
Because you're if your baby came early, then it's like, when do you take your maternity leave?
Yeah.
If you have
That's so hard to balance.
Mm-hmm. So it's a whole lot of mixed emotions. And I feel like you should have therapists walking around the NICU.
Well, not so much as the NICU as it was labor and delivery, but that was my job in 2020.
Yeah.
Was to go kind of educate and assess for postpartum anxiety, depression, and especially our NICU mamas. Most of the time I'd miss them because they would be over in the NICU. And you also got to think this is COVID.
Right.
So they really don't want a lot of people just floating from one side of the hospital to the other, especially when you're talking ICU and babies. So oftentimes I would have, a note for them with my card. I'm like, reach out anytime you want. And then I would also try to follow up with an email or a phone call maybe a week or so later and just say, hey, I know, baby went to NICU, just letting you know I'm here if you need me.
I remember one of my OBs, he would get frustrated because he would try to come see me in the room and I was always in the NICU.
Yeah.
And he's like, she must be doing fine because she's in the NICU.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, I had totally kind of forgotten about myself and my C-section recovery.
Yeah.
Because in my head, it was like, you have to walk to get down to the will.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something also, moms, we have to look at our own body and recovery too.
It's okay.
Because it took one of the nurses saying, hey, Sarah, let us do our job.
Yeah.
We're taking care of him. You need to rest and recover.
Yes.
But it was freeing myself a little bit. That was hard. And I think another thing with the NICU is when we got discharged, I wasn't mentally ready for that.
Yeah.
Because I almost got accustomed to these amazing nurses.
Yes.
He's breathing check. He's 8th grade check. They know how many times that he's used the restroom.
Yes.
He's
schedule.
Great, right? Yeah. There's nothing wrong. I remember they literally took off the monitors, handed it to me, and said, here you go. And I'm like, wait, no.
And you're like, no. Aren't you coming home with me?
Wait, he's been in the NICU. And I know some parents' NICU journeys they go home with oxygen. They go home with feedings. They go with intensive medicines. Home health. So there's all these journeys, but that discharge home was incredibly hard.
That's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because you feel like, I have a medically fragile baby. Why are you sending him home?
Yeah. And they're like, no, he's good. You're like, yeah, but I'm not good.
Yeah. And you're like, but no, he's not. No, he's not.
And even, Will never had, he didn't ever crash or anything like that or have a medical emergency in the NICU. But then one diagonally to us, the baby his heart kept dropping very low. So even I felt for that parent.
Vicariously.
And I would see it because you would not like I was trying to watch.
No.
But when you're staring in a room all day, you kind of get to know the other NICU parents.
You do.
Which they're good to lean on.
Oh, yeah.
But seeing that and hearing that, even now I sometimes talk to my mom because she spent a lot of the days in the NICU with me.
Yeah.
Just the beepings and alarms triggers us.
Oh, for sure.
So what can we do for NICU moms to kind of give them a little toolbox of processing?
So if it's going to be almost like a sensory overload when it comes to NICU, so the lights, the beeping, the smells, honestly, it's like a hurry up and wait.
Yes.
You are allowed to go take those breaks. You're allowed to step outside of the NICU. You're not a bad mom if you do that.
Yeah.
You are not a bad mom. There are nurses there to intervene if it is needed.
Yeah.
Take that break. And when I say take that break, is it good to get into the hallway next to the NICU? Sure. What's even better is if you can get outside of the hospital.
Take a minute, fresh air.
Get away from the fluorescent lights.
Oh, they drain you.
They do. They're kind of haunting.
Yeah, they are.
So, like we've mentioned before, even if you're only outside for a minute, 5 minutes, do that. Try not to, as best you can, try not to have other inputs. Try to listen to outside.
Like, don't be on your phone. Don't be on Instagram.
Yes.
Don't try to have a long conversation.
Give yourself a sensory break.
Yeah.
Or a sensory reset.
Right.
Voice journaling is going to be huge during this time.
Because sometimes I felt like I was the only, which my family was in the trenches with me. I'm not discrediting that. But I felt like as a mom, they kind of got, I don't know if they got, I don't feel like they got tired, but I felt like they got tired of hearing it. Right.
It can be overwhelming because, again, me personally, I'm an auditory processor.
Yeah.
So I need to say things out loud for me to feel like I've actually dealt with them.
Yeah.
And that was probably very similar to you. So your family was there, but then you also have that guilt of, well, they already know Will's status, but here I am telling them about it again.
Yeah.
And so with that, that's where that voice journaling is key.
And my mama bear instincts was going strong. Like, I wanted to protect him.
Yeah.
I wanted to fix it. I'm a huge fixer.
Yeah.
Couldn't fix it.
Yeah.
And then what, boundaries. I think that's important to discuss in the NICU.
Yes. So I say this because I love my mom. She's always been such a huge support with the girls and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to medical stuff, like, she wants to know all the nitty-gritty details. Sometimes I don't want to share that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's too much. And so figuring out, what are you comfortable sharing? Because if you share it, is that person just going to come back with 1,000 more questions? Which that would be my mom. Which is why we never really did much discussion about our infertility treatments with her.
Yeah.
Because I remember the very first phone call I had with her of, my doctor did lab work on me and my progesterone is next to nothing. And so now they're starting me on this medication. She's like, well, what is the medication? How often are you taking it? And why is your progesterone low? What have you done? I'm like,
whoa.
Okay, pump the brakes. I just needed some support. I didn't need to play 20 questions.
Yeah.
So I learned with that circumstance, okay, that's not who I need to go to with medical stuff.
Right. And I think another boundary that I had to do was, people thought that, like, to me, time was standing still when we were in the NICU.
Yeah.
But it wasn't for everybody else.
Yes, that's a weird place to be.
And that boundary of, like, what I needed emotionally, but I can't deny life's continuing on.
Exactly.
And I remember there was a phone call my mom had received when we were in the NICU, and literally fresh in the NICU. Like, when I say me and Will both almost didn't make it, was very close. And this phone call happened, and the person knew about the situation.
Okay.
And had asked my mom for a favor. Didn't even ask anything about me or
the well-being of y'all.
But it was just like, hey, you need this. And I felt so dismissed, outraged.
Yeah, overlooked.
And it was like, it was a realization that, not that I guess I shouldn't say they didn't care, but you are in this world so deep in it.
Yeah.
And not that you have to get these people a pass.
Yeah.
But you have to reframe that in your head, because I took that very personal.
Oh, I'm sure. How could you not?
Or it's okay. It's just
yeah, y'all are here.
Right. The gaslighting.
Yeah.
So it was just...
he's a 34 wicker. He'll be fine.
Yeah, at least he wasn't 22 weeks, or at least he wasn't, or at least he survived.
Yeah.
So it's also like, I would just get so defensive and angry. So I think just processing it, and I wish I would have had this knowledge now of what to do.
Yeah.
But
it's hard.
But NICU moms, we're here for you. Reach out.
Absolutely.
There is often, hospitals do have therapists, like Whitney was there, that can talk to you.
Yeah.
It is finding those safe people, safe support spaces.
Yeah.
It's knowing if you do not feel like sharing it, that's okay.
Yeah.
If you need help, ask for that help.
Absolutely.
And just know that this is nothing that you did.
Yeah. You didn't do anything wrong.
And that your baby is loved and taken care of. And
Absolutely.
You can advocate for your child, ask questions, keep a notebook.
You're allowed to.
And you are still the mom. You're the mom.
Yeah.
They're there to help your baby, but you're the mom.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys as always. Till next time.
See you next time.